Thanks to all of you for joining us as always on this program. This is your one stop shop for information about the land sector of Liberia. Thanks to all of you for being a part of this presentation as we look forward to continuously informing you about different happenings and new updates in the land sector of Liberia. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Daniel Ankrah. Today on the program, Land is Life, we have something very important that we will be talking about today on the program. Today, we talk about lots of issues relating to the environment and land. And so, to talk about that, we have a geological expert who will be telling us about how we interact with the land. I know I'm using interact because it's mostly human to human, but this time around, conversation will go more in detail as to how the different things that we do can affect the land that we live on, the land that we farm on, the land that we do so many different things with. So, all of you, thank you for following us as always on the Land is Life program. The repeat is also on Saturdays from 5 to 6 p.m. on this very station, ELBC Radio 99.9 FM. The program is also live on the LNTV Liberia Live Facebook page. So if you're following, you can also follow the live edition online. Thank you all for joining us on this presentation of the program. We take a short break. When we come back, our guests will be live and we start off our conversation. Land is Life. The Liberia Land Authority, in collaboration with ELBC, presents the Land is Life radio program. It's a radio show designed to provide awareness on the land rights law and give you update on new happenings in the land sector. Tune in to ELBC every Monday evening from 6:05 p.m. to 6:55 p.m. for the program Land is Life with your host, Daniel Ankrah. Don't miss it. The Land is Life radio program is proudly sponsored by Landisa, an international organization working to secure land rights for rural women and men. All right, welcome back to the program Land is Life. Land is Life is a radio program designed to inform you and educate you about different aspects of the land sector in Liberia. And we're happy to have as our guest today on the show Mr. J. Nigatus Wright. Mr. Wright is an expert. You know, I don't only like to call white people expert, I also like to call black people expert. So he's an expert in geographic information system, remote sensing. In short, he's a geologist. Mr. Wright, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. And let me say good evening to all of our listeners, and I'm happy to be on the show.
Great. I'm happy to have you as well. Thank you for joining us. It's actually been a long time coming, but thanks for, giving us the space to speak to you. I know you're very busy, man.
You're welcome, Daniel. And also, I want to thank you for your patience also.
Thank you, sir, for joining us on today's program. Now, we have to put the show in context. So I will appeal to you as we go through the show. Please, I know you got all of the, geological terms, but we'll also have to break them down.
Yeah, actually, the show is meant for the listening public.
Yeah, the listening public to
understand. So we have to speak to the level that everybody understands.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining me. Now, quickly tell me, let's start on a broader perspective, and we can narrow in on the topic for today. Yeah. Generally, when we talk about geology, what comes to mind, or what should come to mind, from your expert position?
Yes, actually, when you talk about geology, first thing that comes to mind is about the earth and its formation, okay, and all of the things that are formed within the earth, the physical, natural. So when you are talking about geology, somebody will say, "Oh, but actually, I've been hearing about geology is defined so many ways." So for everybody to understand, you will look at the primary earth sciences and how they look at the earth, the formation of the earth, the composition of the earth. And why is the composition of the earth? You're talking about the rocks, the type of soil that make up the earth, and the processes acting on them. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about geology, you will also look at the history of the earth, and somebody will say, "Well, how old is the earth?" Then geology tells you that the earth is about 4.5 billion years old. We say, wow. So these are things we talk about in geology.
Wonderful. Thank you for giving us a perspective of what we're talking about. And you've done extensive study in Morocco, both your bachelor and masters. Talking about all of these things. I know you returned to Liberia in 2016, and we'll talk about that maybe later. But let's get into the issue now. Our conversation today is geology versus the environment. And as you've defined it for us, why is it important, from your perspective? Because the environment basically would talk about the land, because all the things we do, whether it's good or bad, it affects the land directly, not indirectly. So, what is the relationship between geology and the environment?
Yes, so first of all, when you look at the relationship between geology and the environment, and from our definition of geology, we talk about the earth and every processes that talk about informations. The environment also exists. It's part of the geology. Because if you are talking about the environment, you are talking about everything that is around us. And everything that is around us, we talk about the water, we talk about the air, and I just mean everything around us. So the relationship here is that you have the geology that is about the formation of the earth, everything that is in it, and the environment also being part of it. So the relationship is so important that it all depends on each other. Yeah.
Good. Now, this brings me to talk about how does it affect the environment. Now, this is a program that talks about land, and so let's talk about how the sciences affect the land. On both ways, positively and negatively.
Yeah. So your activities actually, as a human being, affect the environment.
Okay.
The environment that we find ourselves in. So what are some of the activities, geological activities that maybe affect the environment? Maybe how do we do some coastal activities? Coastal hazards affect the environment. On the coastal, you have the land, the rocks fall. You have the mud flow and landslide. These are all geological processes that affect the environment. In other countries, Daniel, you will see something like an earthquake taking place, and you will talk about volcano eruptions. But for Liberia, we are on a very stable fault. You will not easily have things like earthquake or volcano eruption. But in our environment, we have things like erosions. So erosion takes place. So sometimes erosion will take place. These things, though they are natural, but sometimes they are human-induced causes. So they all affect our environment.
Interesting. Now, from another perspective, geology is basically the study of the earth. Now, let's take it into phases. You mentioned a couple of things that I want us to talk about. You talked about coastal defense. You talked about, landslide. Now, these are issues that are important to Liberia for so many reasons. One of those reasons is that we're currently experiencing our rainy season. First thing first, let me ask you from your perspective.
Yeah.
Are we still, observing the January to from May to November rainy season, from December to March? I mean, climate change has done a lot, but is that something that is going as stable as it were probably 20, 30 years ago?
Actually,
there seems to be a shift. I mean, I don't have the expertise.
Yes, you may not have, but I think from your observance of the weather and the climate in Liberia, I think there has been some shift in those things. Normally, we say we have 2 seasons, and you talk about them ranging, that time that maybe you expect the rain, or at that time you expect the sun. Yes, these things actually, Daniel, they actually don't really happen in some areas of our country. Like quite recently, I was in some part of the southeast, visiting Maryland and Grand Crew, and between Grand Jide to Nimba, you see that maybe rain is not even falling. And normally during these seasons, they are dry seasons. So climate change it plays a lot when it comes to the dynamic in the environment. And the climate change issues, people have been observing, it's about the change in the weather conditions over a long period of time.
Definitely.
And this has an impact on Liberia. So we all experience it. So there's a shift in that.
Definitely. Now, as Liberia as a country, we do not want to experience anything called landslide because what I've seen personally from neighboring Sierra Leone and other parts of Africa has giving us a whole new perspective of what landslide could look like if it were to happen. But from your geological perspective, what are those factors that could affect? Because we have heavy rainfalls, which is probably a primary factor. But what else could affect or could cause a landslide? In a country like Liberia. I mean,
Yes,
what could we be doing right or wrong?
yes, in our country, you may experience landslide in some other area. Looking at the land formation of our country, you have areas that are have that have high elevations, like in the mountainous area. And if you have residents within those areas, and there are some dynamic within those areas, like maybe some mining activities taking place, and you have a heavy rainfall, and you're looking at the texture of the soil, actually there will be a landslide. You mentioned Sierra. If you went to Freetown is just on top of the hills. So you have houses being erected on the side of the hills, and you got a heavy downpour, and you're looking at the texture of the soil. Actually, you have sediments that are not really strong. So if there is a heavy downpour of rain, you will have a landslide taking place. Unlike in Liberia, you have most of our cities are built on flat land. And so what you will experience in Liberia, in most of our city, it won't be landslide, you will have erosion taking place.
Erosion.
Yes, you have erosion taking place. And there will be causes also that may lead to that erosion that take place, maybe due to the high population growing in the urban area, people erecting into the waterway. And once you erect into the waterway and the water does not have anywhere to pass, it will surely make a way into your bedroom, and you will have flooding all over.
Yeah. True, and given the elevation status of countries around us, Sierra Leone seems to be way up there, up the mountain, and so these things can happen. But most of what we experience here is erosion, and from your perspective, I know that you've mentioned the issue of people building, in the waterways, but I mean, what sort of concerted action can be taken, to avoid some of the causes of the level of erosion we experience? Because now social media, as soon as one place is flooded, everybody can see it.
Yes, actually, Daniel, what we need to do sometime, we really need a plan when we are building our cities. Even if you are building your village or a town, you need a plan. If you have Morovia that was planned maybe for about 700,000 persons, and you have 1 million people living in here, and during our age, every young man wishes just about maybe getting a land for himself or for herself to construct, to have a home. And once the population's growth is high, people grabbing land here and there, people don't have time for maybe wetlands, and they are erecting all sort of structures. Daniel, it wouldn't be like a magic. You will surely experience these things. So what you can do is have a plan for the city. Okay, I know the population will grow at X number per so and so year, but when we are building, we try to avoid these places, because it's not only about affecting maybe erosion taking place. The more you write the structures in the wetland, you are driving away the wetland, and there are some species that live in those places. And once you try to endanger them, actually, the nature won't feel sorry for you. It surely haunt you. So there should be a plan, Daniel.
But then the question is, yes, there should be a plan. But what about people who live in certain communities and they throw garbage anywhere? The garbage, blocks the waterway, and then when the place gets flooded, they tend to blame others, as if the dirt appeared, in their community.
And in our discussion, that one of the good things for you and myself, we will avoid the issue of blaming others. We will move like the local how to find solutions towards these things. But for those who are blaming others, Daniel, as you rightfully said, you will see maybe I will cause garbage and take it and dump it in the waterway. And once my community is flooded, then I try to blame others. No, I should be very much aware that blocking the waterway, actually, it will lead to the water finding its way wherever place is finding itself to pass.
Definitely.
Again, there are other people who have money, right? You buy land in a wetland, you build houses. Maybe you have a high foundation. I don't care how flooding takes place, you won't be affected. But let's look at a common man who cannot afford to even erect a foundation of about maybe 2 meters high. So because of your action, that common man will be affected. So what we have to do is, once the Environmental Protection Agency comes up with some kind of regulations to say family or Liberians, let avoid eating, all we have to do, Daniel, is to adhere to that. Because if we don't do it, we are causing damage to ourselves.
I mean, I couldn't agree more how much damage we could cause. And then the question here is, how much damage does it cause to the environment when we do that?
There will be extensive damage being caused. Actually, extensive damage in the sense that you are not only affecting the life of the people who may experience this flooding, but again, you have, as I said, some aquatic species that live in the water, that live in those wetlands, that you are endangering them. And you and myself, mind you, our life on Earth is like we are in an ecosystem. We depend on each other. Those living things, those living organisms in there, they depend on each other to survive. Likewise, you and myself, we depend on them. So there's a life cycle going on. So if you continue to threaten their environment, you yourself, you will be affected as an individual. At the end of the day, not only property will be damaged, but sometimes you will have life being damaged, destroyed. You will have sicknesses actually creeping into the environment that you may maybe be thinking about where do they come from. But sometimes it is because of our own action to our environment.
And it's good that an environmental expert is speaking, geologist is speaking. So it's not Daniel, Ankrah saying that if you put dirt in your community, it has effect on you, or it's going to cause erosion. And people who may not even be the reason why the dirt is there, some of them could be affected as a result of massive flooding and these kinds of things, and cause serious problems. But now let's look at some of the. I mean, we're already into talking about some of the basic causes of these environmental problems. But since flooding seems to be our biggest issue, I know, travel across this country. Almost every week I speak to you, you're in some country somewhere, especially in Southeast Liberia. Yeah. I mean, are those issues, similar to the ones we experience in Monrovia, where people dumping in the waterway or building in the waterway? Are the conditions different, or the circumstances different?
Yes, Daniel. In some of the counties, the conditions are different. In some of the counties, Daniel, everything that we talk about the environment, mind you, population growth has high role to play in that. So you will go in some of the counties, you will not really experience a kind of high population as compared to Monrovia, Nima, and some other places, right? So if you were to talk about flooding, those people in the counties that you have large population, they know how to control the garbage. They know how to build, where to build. Unlike you and myself in Monrovia, everybody wants to live in a city. So anywhere we get the land, even the surveyors, I don't think we are even cognizant of some of the environmental issues. So if you were to sell land to me and I have problem, you prefer taking me to carry me to somewhere here in Monrovia. If it is a wetland, I don't even care. I'll just build my house. So it is actually different in the counties as compared to Monrovia. In Monrovia, you will experience these things because you had a high population density in Monrovia. Everybody dumping there. Anywhere people are building in the waterway, and so erosions will take place. The last time you and myself we witnessed in Gantor, it took place.
Yes.
Gantor is a city that is highly growing. People are building, but there is not a plan. If we are to follow our plan, where to build, how and when to build, we will minimize these issues. Though some of them they are natural, you cannot do away with them 100%, but you can find some mitigating actions towards them.
I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. If you're just joining us, folks, you're listening to the program Land is Life. You're listening to the voice of Mr. J. Nigatus Wright. He's an expert in the field of geology, with emphasis in environmental and geosciences. Now, as we move forward, let's talk about the geographic information system, because I understand it's a new way, that affects or helps us to manage our environment more, specifically with land in question. So, in fact, this is the land rights program. Tell us about that.
Daniel?
Yes? Can you hear me?
You were talking about geographic information.
So I was saying that it's now a problem-solving solution in terms of the environmental issues we experience, especially when it comes to the land. So my question is, what are some of these, problem-solving methods that have been, developed?
Yes, Daniel, actually, thank you. Again, maybe if I may look at that, I am a geographic information system specialist. I studied geology to with a bachelor's degree. When I will look at GIS, there will be a lot of definitions. People may tell you a lot of definitions about GIS. But the common definition about GIS is just a tools that are used to solve the problem, to make decisions on the environment. It plays a very important and a critical role because GIS will tell you exactly what to do and what not to do when it comes to environmental management.
Okay.
So if you were to have an expert who working with maybe the city corporations, who working with other ministries and agencies with a well solid background in geographic information system, trust me, some of these things we will have a minimum effect in our community. So it plays a very important role in the environment in terms of problem solving.
Now, I mean, how direct is it in terms of direct mapping of areas?
Yeah, so for example, you take about Morovia, you take the Morovia place that we live here, you divide Morovia into zone. As a geographic information expert, I sit right in my house and I tell you where you got the wetlands in Morovia. I tell you what is the attitude of the land species in Morovia as compared to sea level. What is the proximity of houses, or what should be the proximity of houses towards or waterways, how to do it. So once you have all of these things in place, and you have to tell somebody, okay, if rainfall at maybe X millimeter, there will be a flooding in this community. So what you do, you avoid building here.
Do we have that level of expertise here? Oh, sorry, you're already telling me. But the reason I'm asking is because how is your level of expertise being manifested? Because if we can reach a point in this country where you can, or a team could advise, for example, that do not build here because of all of the different factors based on our geo information system and what it says and how the water will may affect a whole area, we shouldn't be having issues.
Yeah, this is an issue. When you could talk about this show, I try to tell you actually, Daniel. Let us discuss something that I have expertise on, right?
Mm-hmm. You did.
I left the country in 2008. I went to Morocco and I studied geology. I got a bachelor's degree and I specialized in geographic information system (GIS) and remote sensing applied to geosciences and the environment. But the sad thing about my country, once you return in this country with a lot of this expertise, maybe you don't have a place to work. So what I've been doing, I've been providing my expertise free of charge for the past 7 years to Legis. If you went to Legis, I'm always there helping Thomas Davis and the guys in the GIS department. But we have the expertise. Who on the phone, I can tell you that people should not build here because of this environmental issue that we have. I'm not just going to do a predation. I'm going to use scientific knowledge that government sent me to school that I've acquired. And I'm here sitting down. Currently, you will not believe I'm a project manager. As a GIS and remote sensing specialist, environmental engineer, I'm managing a coastal project. But this place is true, it's a job that I'm doing, but I feel I'm not really pleased in the place that I went to school to study, that I have expertise. I'm a technician. So we have the expertise in place, Daniel. It's just that we have to find the right people, get them to the right positions, and we can solve our environmental problem. We don't need anybody from outside the country to come and solve our problem. The expertise are here, but we are misplaced.
Agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And as you were explaining on the whole geo information system, I'd like you to expand more on it in terms of all the goodies that are associated with it and how it could affect us to even predict what we should or should not be doing.
Yes. So as I was telling you from the onset, these geological issues that we talk about in other countries, I told you will experience earthquakes, you will experience flooding in other countries. Those are slope or the erosions, which is something that is common in my country, you and myself. So what you would do, for example, you look at a community that has swamp, you will map the swampland, you take what is called the digital elevations. You take that digital elevations, what you will do, you will extract all of the underground water body and you will find a mean water channel. Once you find a mean water channel, you will know the dynamic of that water channel. There will be other streams connecting to the mean water channel. Those streams that are connected to the water channel, you will advise people that you are not to build anything here that will cause the waterways to be blocked. Once you do that, you will have all of the information at your fingertip. Once you are advising, you advise people from a scientific and an informed point of view.
Yep.
So if you are to do it, you have a model to predict, to say, okay, if rain fell this year and you have a water level that is reaching this far, I'm predicting from this model that in the next year, the rain that will fall will reach to so and so place. Let me also take you to the coastal zone. The coastal zone, what you also do there, you have these satellite images. Maybe you get Landsat 8 or Landsat 7 or the Sentinel 2 or Sentinel 1 images, satellite imagery. You go and process those images, maybe from 1980 up to the 2000. You see how the dynamic of the sea has been affecting the Liberian coastal zone.
Definitely.
Then from that, you will do another analysis from the 80s up to the from the 2000 up to 2003 and see how the dynamic also affecting the coastal zone. You will now, based on the decisions, and predict that, given all of the analysis that I have done on the coastal zone, I predict that over the next few years, if action is not taken, this is where the ocean will be, and these are the destruction will cause, these are the houses and structures that will be damaged. So I advise that either we erect a coastal defense system so that we cannot damage the coastal zone. The expertise are here. We just have to form ourselves as a team and see how best we can work on them with support from everybody, be it the government, the citizens, or whoever. We have to do that. We have the expertise. So, Daniel, these are some of the things we have to work on.
Now let's throw some light on coastal defense. I know you manage a project, or the Sino County Coastal Defense Project. That is under the Ministry of Mines and Energy and Environmental Protection and the EPA. But so tell us a bit about that project, because again, I know that I remember the issue in Clarendon. Is it Clarendon?
Yes, sir. West Point and
West Point, yes, the Nuku Town. The Coastal Defense Project has been a major issue, and again, the reason why we're bringing this up is because it's a land issue.
Yes.
People build on these places, people squat at these places, and when when the water come and meet them there, it's never an interesting experience for them, and they have to push back. And so tell us about what was happening in Sino County relating to how did it affect the people, the fact that the ocean versus the land versus the people, creating a habitable environment for people. How was it?
Yes, Daniel, when I was coming up, one thing, I was born and I grew up in Sino County, and when we were kids, there are places we used to play, visiting friends, and in recent time when I visited, Daniel, you can't see anywhere.
Wow.
Every landscape, every structure there, especially the downtown Mississippi community, everything has been washed away by the dynamic of the sea. And to that particular point, the dynamic from the sea is coupled with that of the Sino River. You have the dynamic that is being generated at the river mouth is actually expanding, creeping on land, and is wiping structures away. It has been very much dramatic. It's terrifying to see cities being wiped away, and actually you feel as you could do something, but there's nothing that you can do. So in recent time, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, through their boss Wilson K. Tape, professor, and the Ministry of Mines and Energy work with the United Nations Development Programs and Jeff to secure some funding so that they can erect coastal defense. So we went through the process, we applied and got this job. So this time, the Environmental Protection Agency, Ministries of Mines and Energy and Public Work will be working with the UNDP, and hopefully, God's willing, by next year there will be some construction work on the ground to see how best they can block the coastal, the dynamic of the sea. But again, the work that we are talking about that will be done is approximately a kilometer or 2 kilometers long, and you have a sea coast in Greenville that is long, so there will be more resources needed. But for the time being, you have some resources being generated that will be taking care of that aspect in Sino County.
Now, this is good news, for the people of Sino, because it's a land issue. Is people, when land is taken away from people, it takes away more than just what you see, on the physical. But what I'm concerned about is, were there other factors other than regular and normal, environmental changes? Were there other factors did the people themselves play a role in not protecting or helping to protect their land, with the little resources they had?
One of the good things that I was there over my time of being assistant. But actually today, Daniel, it's my birthday, but you did not mention that. So let's talk about the issues. So Daniel, one
Happy
thing.
birthday, Ligatus. Happy
Thank
birthday.
you so much, Daniel. Thank you. We are not actually we human as whole. We don't like to be associated with bad things, right? Especially when maybe because of our actions that may yield bad results. We like to do all that we can to say no, I want not part of it. But the problem in Sino County, perhaps it may have been because of maybe human activities along the coast. Human activities in the sense that maybe in other places, I'm not saying inside, but I visited the Southeast one time. And specifically, let me be frank with you, I was in Harper City.
Okay.
I was in Maryland County and people are digging sand on the beach.
Wow.
I got a video towards that. I got a clip towards that. I got evidence. I went on the beach and I took their pictures. And I told them this is bad because you are undermining this place, and when they see it come, nothing to block it, we just go in your city and carry your thing. And somebody told me that they've been doing that since William V. has done more time, so they don't have anything to worry about. So I said, great. So some of these things maybe they may have been caused in Sino County.
So it seems to be something. It's a wrong thing that people have accepted. So it's become a way of life.
Yes, so
that people will,
a way of life because people have accepted that.
Yeah, I mean, and if you go all across our coastal line, the land is being depleted because people are regularly, taking sand from the beach and forgetting to know what the environmental impact is.
And you won't believe the kind of beautiful lake there. And the lake, actually, you won't even, you look at the lake, it's looking some kind of a way, it's not even looking natural again. And they are failing to realize that their activities have impact on that lake. And there are some aquatic species in that lake. But people say, oh, they've been doing it for X number of years and they have not experienced anything, so they found pleasure in doing it. But Daniel, what I'm trying to say, because we're talking about Sino County, some of these things sometime in the past may have happened.
Okay.
People may have some time, maybe government did not approve of it. Maybe government not even aware. Some of the citizens are not aware, but maybe at night while people sleeping, somebody will go on the beach and just go and do something. But again, I don't want to blame this on the people.
No, I mean not entirely. We all have our roles to play in it. Though.
Yeah, in Sino County, what I'm telling you, there is a huge dynamic from the Sino River, coupled with that of the sea, and the current that is generated, Daniel, is taking away the stretch of land downtown Mississippi Street and the city. And the thing is that you have a bridge that is connecting the TS Town community to that of Syria community. That bridge, if I'm to use my software on my computer, Daniel, if I tell you the dynamics that is taking place over the next few years, if we are not careful, the bridge will be gone. It will collapse, and there will be no way that you can cross. Maybe you use a canoe to cross, which will be very bad. There will be nothing taken to the port easily from the weight of a main Greenville to the port. So the dynamic is high down there. So you have an erosion that is taking place. And there are some underground channels over there, the sea dynamic hitting the Sino River that is wiping out the land. So there's an urgent action that needs to take place. I mean, very urgent one.
Well, then the follow-up statement to that would be that we use the urgent action across the entire Liberia, because if you go across several communities across this country, you would realize that the issue of sea mining and degrading of the land, it's rampant. It's everywhere. And now that we're experiencing the rains, it even gets worse because communities become even more vulnerable to different kinds of environmental issues. Now, let's look towards the future a bit. In terms of resources, I mean, and this would be from the top of your head with no time to do any sort of analysis, but what do you think is needed? Because we're just talking about Sino as an individual county, right?
Yeah.
We're not even talking about Maryland or Grangide, for example. We're not even talking about those counties that this thing is happening. For example, in Basso, there's serious sand mining. I know Dr. Brooklyn has talked about that countless times. Serious sand mining in Basso and in many other counties, that got the coastal line. So what is needed? How do we consolidate efforts? I mean, across, the EPA, whether it's legislatures and all these different, government functionaries.
Yes. So actually, what is needed now is to raise a huge awareness, and I must thank you that you have already started doing that on ELBC.
Mm.
Let our people get to know the impact of our actions on the environment is causing serious harm to us. So we have 9 coastal counties in this country, and we're just talking about maybe Morovia and Sino or Greenville.
Mm.
So once we try to sensitize our people to say, oh, by digging sand along the beach, it will make the coastal zone to be flat. And once the dynamic of the sea is much, and Daniel, actually, what is causing the sea level rise now? At the North Pole, the glacier is melting because of the same thing, environmental climate change issue.
Mm.
So once the ice melts, the volume of the sea increases, and you have all of the rivers and streams dumping in the ocean. Once the water volume is high, what happens is that the water comes on shore with force and it clears things. So the more you and myself will make the coastal zone to be vulnerable in this country, the higher the risk is that the coastal activities will affect us.
It's sad that we're a coastal line country, and we need to look at it very seriously.
It has to
But
be.
but again, one of the reasons why I asked you to come on the show was also to, aside from speaking to government and talking about what we need to do, or partners, for example. I mean, what can you also say to ordinary citizens? Because we think that we're not affecting. I think if I take 20 bags of sand from the beach and go do a couple of blocks to face my bathroom or to face my front porch, I think that it is not in a way affecting. I won't see people taking whole truck there and say they're depleting the beach, for example. So in small ways, how do we affect the bigger issue, and how can we talk to people at that level, to stop doing such?
So here is the issue. Today, maybe Daniel will only carry a wheelbarrow and not even take a wheelbarrow field, but he will just take half. Mm-hmm. He carries to a house, he fills 1 or 2 pieces of bricks. Somebody will see Daniel to say, oh, but Daniel did it, nobody talk. Let me go for my own, or maybe half dish them full of sand. So the entire community will begin to creep in, and everybody will be taking sand gradually. Yeah. And before you come to yourself, over the period of maybe 1 or 2 years, you may have taken substantial amount of sand from the beach.
Definitely.
And with that, it causes problem once the sea level rise. So what I would like to advise our people listening, especially those of us finding ourselves on the coastline, the sand that is over there that you see along the coastline is not by mistake that is there. It's there to block the water when it's coming. When the sea, actually, when the water volume is much, and you have the waves coming in, the sea swell coming offshore, so that it will block it and carry it back. But if you and myself continue to mine sand because you say, oh, maybe government official not seeing me, nobody seeing me, so I will do it. The impact will not only affect the government official or maybe the ordinary man, it affects every one of us. And the good thing, you are talking about land. Your land is being washed away. Your land is growing. Liberia land space is moving small because of the sea erosion. So I will advise that we minimize this activity. There are other ways to making bricks to building houses.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. If you're just joining us, folks, you following the program, Land is live on ELBC Radio 99.9 FM. On ELBC Radio 99.9 FM. Well, if you have a question or just want to support what our guest is saying, the number is 0880-514-096, 0880-514-096, or 0886-948471, 0886-948471. Those are the numbers to call, and you can be live on the program. Land is live, and we will take your question or concern. But before we do that, let me also come back to our guests. I understand you've been working with or doing some work with leases.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to please, share how that has impacted, the geological studies or geosciences, especially when as it relates to the environment.
Yes, at Legis, our colleagues at Legis, they are actually involved in these data collections about boundary demarcations, and Legis has been doing absolutely well. Daniel, you won't believe when it comes to that before you conduct a census, you have to demarcate the land space into smaller numerical area that we call EAs.
Okay.
So those smaller numerical areas, you will have to determine how many person resided. Would that be equated to an urban area or a rural area? So after all of that is done, then you go into the field and do the sampling, get all of the information within those areas. So this is what ladies has been involved with, demarcating the land, the entire country Liberia, and enumerating the people within those land spaces that they have created. So over the past time, when I came from school, Daniel, 2016, I was around here for 2 years. I did national service because government sent me to school. So upon my return, I went to Legis and they accepted me. I did national service, working with Thomas Davis and my colleague, training the field staff. And we have been able to gather some geographical information that the country is now using, that Legis is using, and getting the most information that we need in our country, whether you're talking about surveys, whether agricultural or statistical surveys. So this has been helping. And once that is done again, another thing is that you want to know where you are on the surface of the earth, right? Even if you are in Morovia, you want to know which community you fall in. Legis has been doing that. So this is why we use the geographical information to demarcate the land space so that each individual will know exactly where they fall on the surface of the earth, whether you are in Liberia, which part of Liberia, if you are in Morovia, which part of Morovia. So this is what we've been doing.
Well, this is a very great initiative, and thanks for sharing your expertise with us as always. But we're almost wrapping up the show now because I see that we're almost out of time, and of course the ELBC News team has to come up. But let's wrap up on this on this note. What if nothing happens? What if nothing happens between now and maybe the next 5 to 10 years with all of the level of erosion we see across country, especially on the coastal areas, border points, and all these different kinds of areas? What are we looking at?
Daniel, if nothing happens between now and then, our land will continue to be degraded. Our land will continue to be washed away by the ocean current. The environment will continue to be destroyed. Our aquatic species will continue to be destroyed. Our ecosystem will lose balance. So actually, my hope is that something should be done. Let us all be aware of the environmental impact that our action has on the environment so that we can minimize our activities that cause harm to the environment. And we have to work together as one people. Let us not shift blame. This is not government problem. It is not government that is causing the flooding. I don't also want to blame the citizen. I don't want to blame anybody. But what we can do, once we identify the problem, that this is the cause of the flooding or the eruptions that is taking place, how can we work together as citizens to solve the problem? That's what's matter actually. So let's work towards finding a solution to our environmental problem.
Thank you very much, Nigatus. Is there anything else you'd like to share about, what we're talking about today before we leave you?
I think we have talked a lot. I just want to thank you. We are available at any time you call on us. Once we are in Morovia, we answer your call because this also will help us to share our expertise out there. So I want to thank you and the ELBC team, and I wish you good luck, Daniel.
Thank you, Nigatus. I appreciate it so much for taking your time out.
That's it.
Thank you very much. He's Jay Nigatus Wright, joining us, an expert in geoinformation systems, joining us today on the show Learn is Life to talk about some key issues relating to how we deal with our environment, specifically on how we treat wetlands, how we treat our coastal areas, and why it's important that we put effort toward making it work. He's also working with the team in the Ministry of Mines, on a project in Sino, working on the Sino Coastal Defense Project as well. So thanks to him for taking his time out to be with us. The repeat of this show is on Saturday, 5 to 6 p.m. on ELBC Radio 99.9 FM. Until I talk to you another time, Learn is Live program, the live edition is on Monday, 6 to 7 p.m. on ELBC Radio. Thanks to all of you for following, and do have a wonderful